Hlengiwe, thank you so much for talking to us, and our sincere condolences to your family during this time. When we saw your video and, of course, your caption, I could not help but sense a sense of indignity just in how the tent was. Was this a proper, qualified quarantine facility for COVID-19 patients, or was it more of a makeshift tent, perhaps due to the pressure that the hospital may be incurring at the time? Just describe to me what you saw.
Okay, so it certainly didn't look like a qualified quarantine operation. Somebody on Twitter actually described it as a war zone. They said that it looked like something out of a movie, the war movie. So it's a parking lot, essentially, and then it has tent-like material wrapped around the poles of the parking lot. And then there's beds, and then there's partitions, and then there's beds inside, and then there's oxygen tanks. Basically, that's how it looked.
I mean, to me, it doesn't even look properly, built at that. So I'm even worried about the quality of, that tent, if at all it was meant to, take care of COVID-19 patients. But take me through then your father upon arrival at the hospital. Was he admitted inside the hospital, then transferred to this makeshift tent, or was he directly taken to the tent? And in what condition was he in at that time?
So my father had been suffering from chest pains on and off the whole of last week. And on Friday, he then asked my siblings to take him to hospital. So this was on Friday evening, 1:07 in the evening. My brother and sister took him there and drove him to the hospital. Upon arrival, we were given a wheelchair because he could no longer walk. And then they were taken then to this facility, this structure that was built for COVID-19 patients. When he got there, then the nurse conducted a series of tests, including the coronavirus, the COVID-19 test. And at some point, while the nurse was attending to him, he complained to the nurse and said he's freezing cold, he's freezing cold. And the nurse said, unfortunately, there was nothing that she could do about it. And then thereafter, they made up a bed for him. There were other patients there at that time, just to note. So then they put him in his bed. My sister had to go home and fetch a blanket after he had complained about being cold. And then round about 11, 3 hours later, my siblings left him at that facility, and then he passed away at 2 a.m.
So give me the timelines in terms of from upon arrival to when he took his last breath. What are the timelines there?
So they arrived at the hospital at 7 p.m. 11 o'clock, like I said, they left him because the nurse said it's fine to leave him here. And then at 2 a.m. they came passed away. We got the call an hour and a half later from the hospital saying that my father passed away.
I'm struggling to hear you, but I'm going to keep trying, just in case perhaps it has to do with your phone, just to get this clarity. Hlengiwe, when you told the hospital, besides the nurse, did you communicate with anyone at the hospital around the condition that your father was enduring, including other patients, and what was the response? This besides the nurse telling your father at that particular point where, he needed a blanket, he was feeling cold, and they said there was absolutely nothing they could do. Did you take it a step further as a family and perhaps probe the hospital as to why patients, and including your father, are outside?
So my father, it was my siblings who had taken him to the hospital, my brother and my sister. I myself wasn't there. And my mother is at home. She's also positive. She's coronavirus positive. But we only took it up when I took it up when I arrived, because I'm based in Joburg. I arrived on Sunday. And then yesterday I went to identify his body at the mortuary. And that's when I took that video. And that's when I started asking questions among staff at the mortuary. And I was then referred to the main hospital building for further questions, because I wanted to know what had happened between 11 and 2 a.m., the time of his death. But unfortunately, I didn't get any joy.
In terms of assistance, perhaps did the family communicate to you what kind of assistance that this particular makeshift, tent outside of the hospital was providing to patients? Because in the picture there, I see your father at that time seated with a blanket around him. I'm not sure if there are any ventilators, if there is oxygen. I'm not sure if there's any other equipment assisting patients who have chest pains or struggling to breathe. Did the family communicate to you as to what kind of assistance were they providing outside, if any at all?
So if you can see clearly, he's wearing an oxygen mask. That's what they gave him as soon as he arrived, upon arrival at that facility. They gave him an oxygen mask, and that's as far as and then they conducted the tests. But that's as far as the only assistance that we got from the hospital at the time.
Well, thank you once more. Condolences to you and your family. Indeed, such a heartbreaking sight to see your father in. But thank you so much for just talking to us. This Hlengiwe Khumalo, of course, her father had been admitted in Northdale Hospital, but only outside at what looked like a makeshift tent outside of Northdale Hospital. And unfortunately, that's where he met his untimely death.